This is what I learned while solo traveling for 3 months in South America. I solo traveled to Peru for 3 months, well, close to 3 months. And I want to start with kind of how that happened, where I was when I decided to do that, and how that went, and the reflections and things that I learned while on that trip and solo traveling. So if you're new here, I'm Jordan, and I'm documenting that part of the journey where you have a vision of who you want to be, but you're not quite there yet. And I'm calling that the uncomfortable middle. So I'm currently on a journey to become someone and build a life that I want to live. And this is me documenting that process. I'm not there yet. So I'm just, learning how to document that before I get there. But back to the topic of the video, I want to start out and kind of update y'all on how that journey took place. I had just graduated college. This was right after I did van life. So I did do van life for a little bit after I graduated college. I was a college athlete and I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was just craving freedom. After being stuck in routine for so long, I just wanted to feel free. I wanted to feel like I could make my own decisions and not be told, where to be and what time I need to be doing this, when I needed to be waking up. I just craved freedom so bad. So I made a plan to build a van, do van life. But this solo trip took place after I came back from van life. So I came back, I wanted to travel abroad. I had never been abroad before. Finally had got enough money to buy a passport. So I bought my passport. Soon as I got my passport, like within a week, I booked a trip. And I'll tell you how I landed on Peru. So I was doing researches on places I wanted to go. I knew South America, Central America was like more affordable for me. So I was like, all right, that'll be my first trip out of the country. So I did, I don't know what it's called, astrocartography or something like that, where you put your birthday and it tells you like the most aligned places and countries in the world. Because I couldn't decide. So I was like, I came across this. I was like, let me try this and see, if it makes sense for me. And I did it. And like one of my lifelines, I forgot what they call, I'll put that up on the screen and show y'all kind of definitions and stuff. But my lifeline, those lines that cross, specific towns in different countries, and they all mean something specific to, your life and like your life trajectory. But mine happened to be Lima, Peru. So I was like, you know what? Never heard of the city, never thought about going to Peru before. I was like, let me book a one-way flight ticket and go. So before doing that, I learned that I could work at a hostel. I was like, that'd be interesting, a cool way to meet people, still do some work, still have some structure and some routine, and like not get carried away, have some responsibilities. So I was like, you know what, for my first month, I will, and it helped me with like housing costs. I had free meals, I was meeting new people, being able to like have free lodging and stay in the capital city of Peru. So I did that. I worked at a hostel there. I was helping out, volunteering. I was helping out, like check guests in, help out with the bar, help with events. But I did that for a month, and it gave me a routine. It gave me, being able to meet new people. Like I was feeling so alive. Like I felt so free. I felt like I was finally aligned with like the things that I really wanted to do. Like every day I was in a good mood. I felt people were just approaching me, and like I was like able to be myself. I hadn't felt like I was myself in a long time, and I was really able to just like be myself. And I could feel it. I could feel like people being attracted to me, wanting to talk, get to know me, like telling me about themselves. And I was just having the time of my life. But I slowly started to realize, which is the first thing I learned, is, just because you change your location, those feelings that you had before you left, they're gonna go with you. They're gonna find ways to creep in, in your downtime. Those thoughts are still gonna come in, that doubt, the uncertainty, that voice in your head telling you like you're wasting your life. You don't know what you're doing with your life. You don't know what you want to do, man. You got to pick something. We're always pressured to like know what we want, and we're pressured to pick something. But so those voices were always in the back of my head. And when I was in Lima, I was having a great time. I was surfing. I kind of like got carried away with like going out. I wanted to go there and have a routine, but over time I started distracting myself again. Like when I was getting lonely, and I started distracting myself again, going out, hanging out, meeting people, drinking, partying. saying yes to like all these random plans, which is a part of it too. And I'm glad I did like do all that. But this is just like things that I learned, you know? And I learned that you can't outrun how you feel. Wherever you go on this world, wherever you go on this planet, you go to another planet, those feelings that you have when you're alone and you're by yourself, they're going to find a way to creep back in. And I learned that. And I'm grateful that I was able to, you know, learn that lesson. So back to the solo traveling in Peru, I was in Lima surfing, you know, touring the arts districts, meeting new people from all over the country, all over the world. I had taken a coffee course, learning about coffee. And originally, I'll go back to how this trip was really going to start. I wanted to travel all across South America. I wanted to do Colombia. I wanted to work on a coffee farm in Colombia. I wanted to, you know, really wanted to go to Thailand, but the flight was so expensive. But I was like, all right, I'm going to bounce around a few countries in South America, Argentina, Chile, Peru, Colombia, and just bounce around there, you know, go see some places, check out the vibes, the culture, see what I like. And I wanted to like get involved with the coffee and like learn a lot more about it. And that'll come into play a little longer into my story, but that's how this trip really was originally supposed to be, bounce around a few countries, but I did end up staying in Peru for the full 3 months. I loved it so much there. I just, you know, ended up staying for the full 3 months. But back to Lima. So I'm in Lima, and then I start getting overwhelmed. Like I remember vividly, I'm sitting in a restaurant eating by myself downtown, and all I hear is horns everywhere, people walking. It was like a movie scene. I'm sitting there, I like look down at my food, I turn to the glass window, and I just see cars going by, horns, people everywhere, noise, and then I'm just like, I just have this thought in my head, like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. I'm like, I gotta get out of here. So then I plan a trip to go like to some smaller cities, you know, more calm, laid back, relaxed, like Huacachina, Arequipa, Cusco. So like I do that full trip down, is it down south? For now, I'll call it down south. I may correct it, but I go down, check out all those cities, do all the fun things there. For the most part, I just spent a few days at a time, like Arequipa, Paracas. I kept my time in those cities kind of light. And then once I got to Cusco, I was going to keep traveling down, but I got to Cusco and I ended up really enjoying the solitude there. Like I was able to, you know, separate myself from the crowd. I was staying at more chill hostels. I wasn't working at the hostel anymore. So I didn't have like direct contact with like most of the guests and the new people coming in and out and like inviting me to go do stuff. And I was staying at like more chill, secluded hostels to just, you know, take some time and like reflect and stop running from, you know, those decisions that I needed to make, and like stop running from those feelings that I was getting about like not having stuff figured out, and really try to get something from this trip besides, you know, partying and like meeting people. I wanted to really, you know, get to know myself a little more, spend more time with myself. And for the second thing I kind of learned was, you know, you don't have to have the perfect trip planned out. You don't have to have the perfect like plan. I mean, yeah, having a general idea of a few things you want to do, but also allowing, you know, spontaneity to come in and like take you places you may never thought you would go, and like meet people you never thought you would meet. And that's one thing that journey taught me, was just like be loose, but also kind of give yourself grace when it comes to not having a real plan, and like allowing the universe to bring experiences into your life that, you know, may benefit you and help you. And it's kind of what I did there. Throughout that whole trip going to Cusco, I kind of didn't have a plan. I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna go stay in these cities for a few days, and when it's time to go, it's time to go. I meet people, make sure I'm still like making time for myself a priority. And I did that. And then, so back to Cusco, I get to Cusco and I'm there, I'm really reflecting, I'm learning, I'm taking a lot of time to myself, I'm going on hikes, I'm eating clean, I'm creating better habits, you know, I'm not partying, I'm still meeting a few people here and there, but I'm keeping it, you know, I'm putting up some boundaries and not just like saying yes to every plan that comes through the door. But, you know, that time I did do a lot of reflecting and a lot of, you know, building my habits back up. And I worked on eating clean, getting back in my fitness routine because like throughout my time in the other cities, my fitness routine was gone. I was not eating clean. I was just eating random stuff throughout the whole day. I wasn't like prioritizing like my mental and like my actual energy. I was just like throwing my energy all over the place. So I was like, Cusco is going to be the place where I bring everything back to myself. I eat clean. I work on my physical habits again. I started journaling, documenting with my camera, just talking to the camera about my thoughts and my ideas and like things that I wanted to do. And that was like very beneficial for me. And that was like one of the biggest lessons I learned while solo traveling is that, you know, freedom without a routine or like freedom without even just a little bit of discipline is not freedom at all. Like you really get more lost. And that's one thing when I came back to the US that I had to reflect on. Like I really need to get more discipline with my energy and like, you know, what I'm doing and just not too strict on myself. You gotta have some type of, because discipline, like freedom without discipline is like, it's hard. And that's what I realized throughout from when I graduated college to then. I had been disciplined my whole life, and then I craved freedom so bad that I lost all my discipline. When I finally got that freedom, I finally got freedom and I lost all my discipline. And then I felt even more lost. I'm like, what do I do? Like, I couldn't figure it out. I'm like, what's going on? What's wrong? So like the final thing that I was able to come to a conclusion was I was going to keep traveling. I was going to go down to Bolivia. I had a friend there. I was going to go to Bolivia for like a month, check out that area. But when I was in Cusco, I really came to a conclusion. I was like, man, I really saw the life. I really got to take the time to see the life that I wanted to live. So I was like, all right, we need to have some type of discipline with our freedom to really build a life, that you want to live. So I was like, when I get back to the US, I'm going to figure out a way to make travel a full-time thing for me, freedom. I wanted to make freedom a full-time thing, but like disciplined freedom. I wanted to be able to do what I want, but also, stick to myself, like still have my boundaries, still have my fitness routines, still have my creative routines, still building, stuff outside of building my own things and not just stuff for other people. And that was one of my main realizations is, you got to have some type of discipline when you want freedom. But we can go back to the trip. So I'm in Cusco. I come to that conclusion. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go back to the US and I'm going to figure something out to make this a full-time lifestyle for me. So then I come back to the US. I'm still kind of like a little all over the place. And I finally like, all right, I'm going to move to another city and then I'm going to build a routine, stack some money, build something for myself. And then I'm going to go travel and I'm going to make it like, I'm going to make this a thing for myself, like something that I can do and something I can do whenever I want. Because like one thing about solo traveling is, you really get to know yourself. You really get to know, like you're forced to depend on yourself. You're forced to trust yourself. You start getting in these situations like, you're going to have to figure it out, man. And it's like, you take that with you. When you get put in a situation where you have to depend on yourself and trust yourself, that becomes a skill that you can take anywhere with you. And now I'm like super, like I can depend on myself and like trust myself because I know when I was there and I had to make hard decisions and uncomfortable decisions and be alone that I had myself. And I like that. I like being able to like have a lifestyle like that. So I was like, when I get to the US, I'm going to build something like that. So I get here, I moved to a new city. I'm doing like a few jobs here and there. I'm trying to work on my creative stuff and still not quite able to figure that part out. I'm trying out different things that I was always interested in as a kid. I'm trying to get into acting. I'm doing acting classes. When I first got back, trying to get into photo shoots and modeling and just content creation and just helping other people out with like, I'm trying to learn a camera and I'm trying to figure all this out. And then I finally am like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. I was like, I ran from the corporate world for so long and like corporate jobs. I was like, I'm going to finally use my degree and get a corporate job. So that's what I did. I got the corporate job and, it immediately took away almost all of my freedom and like all of my energy for myself. And it was like, I was super grateful. I was able to stack some cash. I was able to pay off some credit cards, pay some bills, save some money. And at one point, I was working two jobs. I was working my corporate job, and I was working at Olive Garden as a server, waiter, stacking extra cash. And I used all that cash to pay off my bills faster, pay off my credit cards, come up. I really used corporate and that job to like create a clean slate for myself, bring myself back to a clean slate, invest in the gear that I wanted, the camera, just stuff that I could use to, help me build that life that I want to live. And I did that. Got the camera, paid all my bills, figured out a lot of stuff around me. There's still some stuff I needed to work on, but I had to get out of that corporate job. I was like, man, this thing is like draining me so much. Like, I'm grateful for it. I'm able to get money, but like, at what cost? At what cost am I giving up? And I'm like, all right, so what I did, I put together a plan. I was like, let's religiously save money. Let's save as much money as I can. I was like, let's save as much money as I can, put as much money aside, be smart, still enjoy my money, have some, fun adventures and times. I went snowboarding, went to Mexico for my birthday and stuff like that. So, but I'm like, let's stack this money so I can build a runway to get myself out of this, job for now and start working on myself again. Same thing, like start building that internal platform, that internal foundation that I need to be able to live a life like that long term. And that's what I did. Recently I just quit. I have, some time here to myself, maybe a few months to just like relax, build that inner resilience again, work on my mindset, work on my like self-belief and my discipline, and, work on my creative skills at the end of the day. We're all creative, and all artists take time away from their art, and that's what I did. And now I'm trying to get back to it and like work myself back into creating and telling stories and talking, and it's a skill that I'm trying to build. So like, this is just the beginning of my journey and what I will be working on. But yeah, so solo traveling, man, it taught me a lot. It taught me, freedom without discipline can make you get lost. And it taught me to learn how to be alone. I really had to learn how to be alone and like handle alone time, because it does get lonely. You're surrounded by people, but it gets lonely. And that's a big lesson it taught me too. It taught me that when I was in Cusco, I realized, like, I started reflecting on my whole life, and I'm like, man, I'm just a big lonely kid. Like, I'm always been surrounded by teammates and people and this. So like, I was able to distract myself with like friends and hang out with friends and party and drink and play sports and like do other things. So I was always like able to distract myself from that realization of like, I'm really just like, I was just scared. I was just like a scared kid. Like, I was living in fear most of my life. Fear of like failure, fear of trying and like not making it and not being enough. And I really realized that while I was there. I was like, man, why do I have so much fear? What am I scared of? And that's one reflection that I need to, I just came to that reflection right now, just talking about it, that I realized that while I was there. Like, I'm just a big afraid kid. I've been living my life in fear and like not really taking those chances on myself. And I just came up with a conclusion that I was going to start building a foundation. I had to tear up all the foundation. Like, it's like a house. Think of a house built on a terrible foundation. And I'm trying to build this mansion, which is my life. I'm trying to build a mansion on the foundation of a shack. And that just is not going to work. It's going to collapse. So I was like, let's tear this foundation out. Let's build a solid foundation so I can build that mansion of life, build my mansion for myself, and go live that life that I wanted to live. And that's what I'm working on right now. I'm in that uncomfortable middle. I have that vision, but I'm not there yet. And I still have those doubts every day and those conversations in my head. And, those days where you just are like, man, the motivation isn't there. And the confidence just isn't there. And you just got to keep pushing. And I'm realizing that's where your vision is brought to life, when you're able to keep pushing and moving through those moments of like doubt, fear, and, things not quite seeming in your physical reality yet like you want it to be. But you just have to keep that mindset and that goal of like, who you want to be and who you want to become, and just take that action. And I'm working on that. Like, I have days where I'm like, man, I don't want to do nothing. But then there's one thing will spark. Like, I'll see something, hear something, and remind myself. I'll see a reminder, and I'm like, all right, this is what I want, man. I got to take at least one action today that can move me forward. And I think I'm going to write some. I have nothing on my wall by my computer right now, so I want to write like a few small lines that when I look there, just, keeps that mindset for me. This video could be hours long about my Peru journey, because I just have so many stories and like stuff like that, but I'll keep it short and just hit those main lessons that I learned, while solo traveling for 3 months. And I'll go more into the van life stuff as well on here, like what I learned from van life, and then just keep, talking about things that I'm learning. And then I'll start documenting kind of what I'm working on right now. Just want to do some more reflections on this page and talk about kind of where I came from, so you can kind of get to know me, know what I've seen, what I've been through, and, just kind of share some of my insights about what I'm learning about myself. But yeah, if you're new here, I'm Jordan. Thanks for joining and tuning in on this journey. If you have any comments, drop those down below. I'll make sure to respond. We can have a conversation there. Drop a like, subscribe, and hopefully I will see y'all on the next one.